Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sierra Martinez, and I am the Senior Manager of Digital Marketing and Innovation with Blue Star Families. I'm honored to be with you today, and I'd love to kick this webinar off with a big thank you to American Council of Life Insurers, the Armed Forces Benefit Network, and Life Happens for joining us today. Their continued support of our military community enables us to come together for meaningful conversations just like this one. So, whether you're joining us today from home, from work, or maybe you're even on vacation, I'm so glad that you're here because this webinar is all about you, our service members, and your families. Today, we're going to discuss a lot of things that are very important when it comes to your finances. And if you have questions, I would love for you to share them in the chat. If our panelists can't get to them right away, we'll make sure to continue the conversation within the neighborhood. Additionally, I just want to let you know PII is very important, so don't share any personally identifying information within the chat. Just keep your questions general and adhere to our community guidelines. With that, I'm so excited to kick this off and get started. I'd love to introduce Jessica Mancari. She is the moderator of this event and ACLI's SVP of Public Affairs. Thank you for being here today, Jessica.
Thank you, Sarah, for coordinating and for setting up today's conversation. And a huge thank you to Blue Star Families for teaming up with us to make this series on financial protection happen. Your work is huge in supporting military families, especially on this important topic, and it makes a real difference. So we're very grateful. Like Sierra said, my name is Jessica Mancari, and it's an honor to be here with Blue Star Families. Personally, because I grew up in a military family, and so the rhythms of that life, the moves, the changes, the sense of community, base life, being in military schools, that's a huge part of who I am. And today feels like a special moment for me because today, in my career, I work with the life insurance industry. And so in that work, I get to help support the financial protection of families, like military families, like the one that I grew up in. And so we're proud to be here today. The American Council of Life Insurers is the national association of life insurance companies, and our mission is very, very simple. It's to help families, including military families, have a financial protection and security. And I'll just give you one example of how we've worked with Blue Star families in the past. A couple years ago, we worked together to pass retirement legislation that was signed into law that improved military spouses' ability to save for retirement. Things like making sure that, vesting with employer contributions happened quickly and expanded eligibility with all the frequent moves that are happening. It's such an important thing. And so we're very proud of that work. But today we are going to dive into another very, very important topic that's often overlooked, and that is life insurance. And something that really strikes us when we think about this topic is that even for those who have life insurance, they don't always have enough. And I would say, in fact, I think half of Americans report that they would feel some sort of financial hardship within 6 months if a primary wage earner were to pass away unexpectedly. So we know life insurance is one of those things that can feel very complicated. It can feel intimidating. And so today we're going to break it down in a way that's very clear and very practical and hopefully very relevant to your life and the particulars of your life. So there's a lot of options, and we have a couple of experts here to talk to us about that today. Options that are available for your specific life as a military family. So let me share a little bit about our experts today. We're joined by Brian Steiner, who is the Executive Director of Life Happens, which is a nonprofit that's focused on financial education. He's very passionate about helping families understand life insurance, and he even runs a scholarship program through Life Happens for students who've lost a parent and didn't have life insurance coverage. So his goal today is to empower you to help understand those decisions, those financial choices that you can make. And then we have Michael Nordquist, who is the founder of the Armed Forces Benefits Network. He's spent over 25 years helping service members and federal employees understand their benefits, the unique benefits that they have. He's inspired by his own family's military legacy. And so his mission here today is to make sure you have some tools and knowledge to protect your financial future. And our hope together is that the lessons that you learned today and that you take away today will give you maybe something you didn't know, maybe some bit that you could take to the dinner table and have a conversation with your spouse or with your financial planner. So let's settle in and get started. We're going to start with basic overview, and that is what is life insurance? What does it cover and who is it for? And so, Brian, can you start us off with a 101 on what life insurance is and what does modern research even say about what we should know about life insurance these
Uh,
days?
Thank you, Jessica, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here and participate in this panel. And happy Life Insurance Awareness Month too. So September is National Life Insurance Awareness Month. So very timely conversation for hopefully the folks listening and for our industry as a whole. Life insurance, it may sound cliche, but often we could dub as love insurance. For those that have responsibilities, whether it's family, children, liabilities of home, things of that nature, that if something did unfortunately happen and that person is no longer here, that there are resources available to those left behind to help cover those costs, stay in homes, cover debts, give people, a dignified, burial, things of that nature. And, the life insurance industry is there to help protect those folks to make that process as painless as possible and allow those to grieve the right way.
Brian, and I guess, Mike, turning over to you and your experience in working with financial plans, especially with military families, why is it important that military families in particular consider life insurance as a part of their financial planning?
Well, thanks, Jessica. First of all, thank you for allowing us to be part of this panel. We are honored and privileged to be able to contribute. And again, and our wish is hopefully we'll be able to point out a few things. Maybe somebody get some takeaways from our discussion today. But really, as far as insurance is concerned, it's a question that doesn't really pertain not just to military, but to all American families. I mean, one thing I could say pretty comfortably is you could talk to five financial professionals from five different firms from five different states, and they're going to probably come up with five different strategies on what would be the best way to plan for your future. But the one thing that I think that they would all agree on is having a foundation of insurance. Life insurance is pretty much the core foundation of any financial plan. It creates an immediate estate for living expenses, essential living expenses, whether it be education, food, housing, childcare. So those are just some of the reasons why insurance is very important, not just for military, but for everybody.
Yeah. And I'll add to that too, Michael and Jessica, you brought up some really great points in the onset of this session. There are some significant coverage gaps out there, and a lot of people that are offered coverage through work or military service or whatever organization they be part of. A lot of times, those are great benefits to have, and I never want to disparage those opportunities to take advantage of those. But in many instances, it often isn't enough coverage, and you know, people don't like to talk about getting sick, dying, and getting hurt. They're not the most exciting dinner table conversations, but they're incredibly important. And to Michael's point, insurance is a foundational element of financial planning, and getting people to think differently and prompt them to take action to evaluate their life insurance needs is paramount for not just military families, but families and everyone in general.
Yeah, and talk a little bit more about that. I mean, it's there's some decisions that you make. You make the one-time decision and you kind of set it. Is that something that we should be thinking about with life insurance? You make the decision and then you just kind of sit there with it with life insurance, or when do we need to be reevaluating? How does that work?
You know, it's one of those things that we always encourage people to act sooner than later. There's no better. What's the analogy about what's the best time to plant a tree? It's like, 10 years ago or today. It's one of those things that the longer you wait to act, can be more challenging to get. Obviously, as you get older, there's other underlying health issues that could present themselves that could make qualifying for life insurance or any insurance a little bit more challenging. And obviously, prompting young people and educating them to think about life insurance isn't necessarily a lot of people or a lot of things are in a lot of ways aren't pre-wired to think that. But having conversations like this hopefully helps create some awareness and prompt people to do so. But, as you mature into your life insurance needs may change. And, having, actively reviewing your policy once you get it on an annual basis or every couple of years, I think makes a ton of sense because your family may get bigger. Maybe, your family's out of the house and maybe your liability is changing. You don't need as much coverage. So there's a lot of things to kind of be, aware of as things progress. And, again, having those conversations with a professional can definitely help you navigate that to make sure that your financial plan stays sound the whole way through.
And Michael, military families have different types of life insurance available to them. Most common are the service members group life insurance. You've got the family service members group life insurance, and then veterans group life insurance. Our team's going to share some resources about that in the chat, but could you give us just a quick definition of what those are and maybe some of the differences between them that people should consider?
Sure, I'd be happy to. What starts off with your servicemen's group life insurance. So your servicemen's group life insurance is something that all active duty personnel are going to get. Generally, they're going to all be signed up when they go right into MAPS when they're getting all their paperwork done. They're generally signed up for the maximum amount, which is $500,000. The cost for that is $25 a month. So it's very, very competitive. And there's also a $1 fee also for TSGLI, which is traumatic injury protection. In the event they suffer a traumatic injury, it helps. It gives them short-term income for rehabilitation. That is basically the military's equivalent of your group life insurance that you have in the civilian world if you were in a corporate environment. So this is your insurance that you have that's part of your financial benefit package. It's very competitive. You can reduce the amount. It goes in increments of $50,000 up to a maximum of 500K. We always suggest for most people that they go ahead and take the maximum simply because it's very, very affordable. It's one of the best deals out there you can get in the insurance world. So it's a very robust benefit. The problem is 120 days after you DOS, ETS, or EAOS, or EAS, depending on your branch, it's going to terminate. You do have an option to convert that over to what they call veterans group in life insurance, which is another facet of your benefits. And you can convert that over within that 120 days, actually within 240 days, without proof of insurability, which is also something that's very, very important because not everybody's going to retain their insurability as far as from a physical aspect, right? A lot of people don't. Generally, most people don't leave the military in as good a shape as they went in, right? Because of the demands of the job and also just because they're getting older. So that's something that you have to take into consideration. And then the other benefit I think you wanted me to touch on was the family group life insurance, which is a relatively new plan. It hasn't been around for very long, a few years, but essentially what that is a benefit for anybody that's a spouse or a dependent of somebody that's on active duty in the armed forces. They're automatically going to be enrolled into that plan. So the benefit to that plan is $100,000 for the spouse and $10,000 for the child, for each dependent. The premium on that is very reasonable as well, but it is bracketed based on age. So if you're under 35, it's $4 a month, generally is what's deducted from the service member's pay. And then it goes up every 5-year brackets, all the way up to a maximum of $40 a month if you're over 55. Now, the other thing with that program is that it can also be converted. That's something that I believe is fairly new. Before, when it first came out, when it was first conceived, spouses weren't able to convert it. It was just done. When you ETS'd or you retired, that benefit was gone. I think the military and the government, they realized that there was a problem there because you had a lot of spouses that didn't have insurability either. They get out, they thought they had insurance. They get out into the civilian world and then they realize that they don't have insurability and they can't get insurance to protect their family. So now they can convert those policies over to a permanent form of insurance if they do that within 120 days from the service member separating.
Yeah, it's really, really helpful to understand all of the options that are available. And I guess a follow-on to that is, I guess if you're someone who's considering these options in front of you, how do you think about balancing the short-term needs with some of these longer-term planning issues like life insurance? And I think too, sometimes I think there's misconceptions around how expensive life insurance is or can be. And so, Brian, Mike, maybe either of you could speak to just the balancing of those two things, short term, long term.
Well, to Brian's point, he had mentioned, as far as evaluating what your insurance needs are, right? The family, your life is a fluid journey, right? And your family and your financial condition is also a fluid journey. I mean, that's something that's going to change, year by year, sometimes month by month, depending on the situation. So it's always good to be able to evaluate exactly what your insurance needs are, because sometimes they may be more when you have maybe a young family, but then they may draw down after those children are out of the nest and they go on and start their own families. So
Yeah.
that's always changing. But getting back to that, Brian, you want to point out as far as the short term and the long term?
No, I mean, similar to some of the remarks you made regarding the group policies, which sound like fantastic programs, and while I'm not on the ends of all of the options that you guys are mentioning, understanding those, taking advantage of those, and can be incredibly impactful. But you had also noted, obviously, getting individual coverage beyond that in the event that obviously move back to civilian life or make a transition, and those group benefits. There are conversion features, but a lot of times not all of it comes with you, or cost may change, things of that nature. But, the younger you are, the less expensive life insurance is. And even if, you're not married or you don't have the family yet, um, locking in coverage, even in a more elevated amount, gives you the flexibility down the road. A lot of carriers out there, and I know we're not going to get deep in the weeds on specific companies, but term insurance is an inexpensive type of insurance that it's kind of like renting a house or renting an apartment where you have it for a period of time and then it expires. Um, but a lot of those companies offer abilities to convert that to a more permanent coverage that's going to last, for as long as you want. And in doing so, you don't have to prove medical underwriting. So if you do have a health issue that presents itself, you don't have to go through that process anymore. They can't take that coverage away. So there's some great opportunities the younger you are, to, I don't want to say overinsure, but potentially take on a little bit more than you think you would need. Um, just kind of protecting your future self and family.
100%. And also, educating yourself on the types of insurance. There's all different types of insurance, right? It's not
Yeah.
just, death insurance, which pretty much what your group life insurance is. It's designed to create an immediate estate in the event something happens to you if you die or get killed. But
Yeah.
there's also insurance if you become sick or disabled or you suffer a catastrophic illness. So there's all different types of insurance. And to Brian's point, your term insurance is very reasonable now. It's kind of like renting. Uh, when the rent's due, you can obviously renew it. The problem is the rent's going to go up. Typically with term insurance, as you get older, the mortality cost, the cost of the insurance is more, and it continues to increase to the point where in some cases it becomes, it's not feasible to be able to sustain it.
I guess talk a little bit about I think often we hear a lot how people sort of miscalculate how much life insurance they might actually need. What are some practical ways that people listening might be able to just even back of the envelope try to
Sure.
figure out, okay, do I even have enough? Like, where do we even start with that? What are some things that we should be considering in understanding whether we're covered enough or not?
Michael, do you want to take that one, or you want me to go
Sure,
first?
sure. I'm happy to, or at least I can tee it up. Basically, one thing that we do is we always sit down with somebody and conduct just a basic insurance need. And it's a really simple process. It can take as little as 5 minutes. It can take as much as an hour, depending on the complexity. But it's a very simple formula, and it really comes down to how much insurance that you have right now. Whether you have just your serviceman's group life insurance or maybe you have commercial insurance. So you have your insurance, you put that together, you have your spouse, if you're married and you have a spouse that's working in the workforce, or maybe they're on active duty, you combine their benefits. Then you just look at things like, living expenses. People don't realize, but if you Google, anybody can Google it right now. You can Google how much insurance, do you recommend I should have? How much insurance should I have? Generally, the consensus is about 10 times your annual salary. So if you look at somebody on active duty, if you look at their regular military compensation, which also includes their housing, their health care, dental care for themselves and their dependents, it becomes quite a robust package. So you're looking at, somebody that's maybe an E5, a sergeant in the military that's married with 3 kids has got a benefit package and has a standard of living that's roughly 75 to $80,000 a year. So if you just take that and multiply it by 10, that's $800,000 of insurance right there that you need because of your dependents and your children. So there's that. And then if you have any homes, your debt, basically you add it all up and then it's simple math, right? Numbers don't lie. They tell the truth. There are numbers that you put in there. You see how much insurance you have and you see how much your basic insurance need is. And it's as simple as that. And it's either going to tell you that you have enough insurance, too much insurance, or you don't have enough insurance. And generally, it's usually the latter.
Yeah, and at lifehappens.org, our organization, our whole mission is to educate consumers on the importance of protection. And we have a life insurance needs calculator that's part of our homepage on our website, that's available, that I think does a really good job of kind of being independent in our messaging, to help better understand, to Michael's point, the needs that you may have and coverage that you need. The other thing to take into consideration too, is, life insurance can be very impactful to help offset liabilities, but also the amount that you take into consideration is income replacement. Just because you have $1 million policy, um, and if you spend it all, but you're not able to replace income, that can be a challenge. So, conservatively speaking, and you probably get differing opinions from different folks, but assuming 4 to 5% conservatively as far as interest off of a benefit, if you're looking to create income. So in that instance, $1 million would create $50,000 of annual income. So again, just some high level type ways to think, but it can kind of put the amount or need, bring a little bit more visibility or thought to it because, oh, I have a couple $100,000. That's awesome. And that can make an incredible impact on people's lives. But if you're looking to replace income, that may not always be the case.
Yeah, it's an important distinction. And I think so. ACLI puts together every quarter a financial resilience index, and it looks at middle class families across the board. So, not just military families, but families across the board. And it's looking at how well resourced they are, what kind of savings do they have, what are the cost pressures that they're facing. And we did one that we released in July, and it showed that military families, so when we look at the data and look specifically at military family, middle class households, about half of them feel pretty confident about their ability to manage, a financial situation. And I would say that that is significantly different than non-military households. I think that came in at 37%. So I think that's good. There's a lot of
Good thing.
confidence within the military community. So that's a great thing. But I guess the follow-on question to that and this discussion around, are you protected enough? Do you have enough insurance? And in the conversation that Michael's pointing out, your situation changes all the time. Brian, when should people seek advice from a professional? Like how do you think about that, especially at Life Happens when you're, hearing stories from families who've been in situations?
My time at Life Happens and my time in the financial services industry before that, I stand behind, regardless of how much you make or don't make. I believe everyone is entitled to access to professional advice. And I think it's important to have those conversations. And again, having resources like Blue Star and others to help build communities and awareness around initiatives just like this is incredibly impactful. When you start talking about finances, and I don't want to say the sexy stuff on the investment side, but when we talk again, the focus on protection, life, disability, long-term care, things of that nature, people really need prompted in many instances to act. And, from a Life Happens perspective, we're here to help educate and get people to think differently and better understand the need of those, putting those protections in place. But then ultimately, we want to make sure that we connect you or provide some resources to connect you with professionals to help you put it in motion. And I know there's a lot of people probably listening and a lot of people out there that maybe act and go online and work through some of the direct marketing companies and secure insurance, and that's fantastic. Most people in my experiences kind of need their feet held to the fire a little bit to kind of see it through. And I wish that wasn't always the case, but it's a personal conversation in a lot of ways, and people like to feel like they have that connection. And there's a lot of great resources out there, organizations like NAFA, that are insurance and financial advisors that can help connect those dots and make sure that the right plans are in place. But regardless if you're, you know, 20 and just getting started or 40 or 50, doesn't matter. It's never too late. And but the earlier the better.
Yeah, and accountability is a good thing always. Michael, when you think about working with military families and, financial guidance and all of that, how do you counsel them?
Well, I think the first thing is, generally with the military, with that community as a whole, we're dealing with a younger, uh, arguably the healthiest community in our country, right? They have PT standards. They're obviously in the prime of their lives. So we do find that there's an awful lot of I don't know. I guess there's a high level of confidence when it comes to them thinking that they have enough coverage and they have enough insurance. But the one thing that we do find is that, either whether we're talking to a junior private or a lieutenant, or we're talking to a major or a lieutenant colonel or a sergeant major, uh, it's amazing. Most of them have never even done a simple exercise like a basic insurance need. They don't even know. They think they have enough. But again, when you're in the military, you're also living in a kind of it's a different culture and it's a different world than living in the civilian community. I mean, you're living in, they call it that bubble, right? The military bubble. You're in that bubble. You're on base. You're paying. You're not paying for housing. You've got your utilities paid for. You've got all your child care. You've got all your health insurance, your dental, all of that stuff's covered. People don't a lot of times take into account how robust that benefit package is, especially if you're just coming in, you're just out of high school or college, you don't have any other worldly experience on how things are. All you know is the military. So all they tend to do is look at that bottom line in their leave and earnings statement, and they discount all the other benefits. So when we educate them and go through that basic insurance need, it kind of opens their eyes because, I still remember talking to a corporal down in Camp Pendleton, California, that was saying that how hard it was. They weren't making any money, but then they're living in a 3-bedroom townhome, in Del Mar on the beach, right? It's base housing. And I'm going, have you stopped to look at this for a second? You've had 2 kids. You didn't pay anything for them. The military covered everything. You're living on the beach in San Diego. Just out of the blue, have you ever even thought what it cost to rent a townhouse like this on the beach? And not pay utilities. So once they start to look at, when they get out of the service, if there is a loss, what it would cost to maintain that same standard of living that they're used to maintaining, most of them find out that they're really not prepared at all. So it's a matter of just educating people and just letting them know, where they stand one way or the other. But I think the most important thing is getting the message out there and letting them make the decision for themselves, but at least knowing where they're at and where they stand. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. The education piece, Michael, is huge. And
100%.
a lot of times people assume, I don't know, there's a lot of assumptions that can be made, but uh, and again, life insurance also has a lot of other functions beyond the death benefit. There's a lot of living benefit options with a lot of products that are out there that, Mike, you spoke to from like a critical illness perspective or issues down the road where you are able to access some of those resources to help offset those challenges. So, it's a pretty powerful tool that, obviously I'm glad we're talking about it today, but it doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah, really important points. And I think Michael pointing out the very unique circumstances that military families find themselves in. And it sounds like a big homework assignment, I think, from this conversation is to just take the time to start working through some of those expenses and what does life look like, and having some of those sometimes hard conversations, but very important conversations to understand what kind of protection is needed. I want to flip now to Brian. With Life Happens, you all do such a beautiful job of capturing the real life stories of people who have, oftentimes confronted tragedy, whether that's a death or an illness or an injury, something to that effect, and then really take a look at their stories and dive into those. I'm wondering if you have a moment or two that you can share that you feel like you've seen life insurance make a real difference for one of the families that you all work with or that you've profiled.
Well, I say, unfortunately, fortunately, with Life Happens, we do work with a lot of agents and advisors and their clients that have had life events, and organization really is at its core about storytelling. And I think, for life insurance and other protection products, it's a really great way to make people understand the power and impact that a life insurance contract can have. Again, a scenario that you don't want to incur, but often, can happen. And no, we've built out a collection of stories of real people all over the country, some military business owners, et cetera, where that those products have allowed their kids to go to the schools that they dream to go to, or families to stay in the homes that they've wanted to stay into, or allowed the grieving spouse the flexibility to go back to, to stay home and raise the family, or go back to work, and give them choice. I was an advisor in the field for a long time too, and I've had to, deliver death benefits directly, and in the passing of a number of individuals. And it's not to say that that solves all the problems, because it certainly doesn't. But it can definitely allow families to take a deep breath and focus their attention on things like grieving properly, and not worry about, you know, well, the mortgage is due next month and I don't know where that payment's going to come from. That's heavy and that's real. And that's not something that, if we're all doing our jobs, hopefully people don't have to face. So, I mean, again, it's a powerful industry, and one that can help give people peace of mind, during a time that isn't always ideal.
Yeah, there's enough that happens in the grieving process, and to just be able to remove the financial worry from that is incredibly huge. Michael, what about you? When you've worked with military families in particular, or is there a moment or two where you feel like you've seen life insurance make a big difference?
You know, I have seen instances, obviously, to Brian's point, we obviously can see where it makes a huge financial, contribution, and it is a game changer for folks, and they are able to focus on grieving and taking care of all the other things besides the financial piece. One of the stories, kind of flipping the script, is kind of a story of not having enough insurance or not having the proper planning. Is I had a gentleman that worked with our organization for many years that was in the Army as an Army officer, up at Fort Lewis up in the Pacific Northwest. And he had been in the military for 16 years, and was planning on making a career of it. He only had 4 years left to go. He had attained the rank of major, so he was a field grade officer. He was hoping for lieutenant colonel, and his wife became severely ill, and eventually it became terminal, and she ended up passing away. But he had also 3 children, and she didn't have an adequate amount of insurance. Obviously, he is an officer in an artillery unit. He's supposed to be out in the field. Didn't have any insurance. Bottom line, didn't have the income to be able to pay for full-time childcare for 3 kids. So he came to me when he had resigned his commission and pulled the plug on his entire military career, basically 3.5 years shy of retirement time, because he wasn't able to stay in, because he didn't have adequate coverage on a spouse, because he always thought about himself. What if something happened to me? But there's also, what if something happens to the other person, your partner in the family? If you have a family, that person that maybe even is a homemaker,
Yeah.
there's a quantifiable financial contribution that they're making, even though you can't physically see it. Childcare, per child is very, very expensive, between $1,100 and $1,500 a month, depending on the age of the child and what state you're in. So
Yeah.
if you have three kids, it doesn't take, too much math to figure out that you're going to need 3 or 4,000 a month to be able to keep things rolling. So, a lot of people don't take that in consideration, and it made unfortunately, a tremendous negative impact in his life. But what he did do is take that experience, and he wanted to be able to share that experience with as many people that he could reach that are on active duty, that could possibly be in his situation, and make sure that, they learned from his mistakes.
Michael, that excellent point, and it kind of goes back to the group offering that you'd referenced, where there's some opportunities to add a spouse or children to the group policies, and obviously, in addition to that, I'm gonna encourage individual coverage for all of those folks. But to your point, if you have a spouse that's stay at home, um, in their absence, the cost exactly the childcare and things that the other side of it that are real and can hit really hard
Really.
and hearing that and seeing that that person had to make a transition that obviously again dealing with a number of challenges and now making the career pivot especially with that type of tenure in the military and
Oh,
nearing
yeah.
retirement. I mean,
Investing
you're sitting
that.
there, that's gut wrenching on a number of levels
Yeah.
in your seat, right? I mean, and for
Yeah.
them,
He
uh,
invested, 16 years of his life, right, into
right,
his career, and had to cut short. And how impactful those benefits are. It's not just retirement pay, but
right.
it's also VA healthcare,
Hmm.
for himself and his kids that he no longer is eligible for. So, uh, yeah, big sacrifice, big sacrifice.
I think often the other unspoken value of life insurance is, for many people, they won't ever have to use it. So then what is the value? And the value to me, at least, and I think about it, is the peace of mind and the fact that for, those who already are having to deal with the anxious things of life that are happening all the time, this is one thing that you just don't have to carry or worry about. And having that sense of security is hugely, hugely important. And so I know we often share stories where there has been a tragic ending, but I think often there are stories with life insurance where it's provided a lot of peace in many ways.
100%, I agree. And I'd also say that one thing that's nice is when we do sit and interact with the military community, that is one thing that they do understand a lot of, which is planning, right? The military, they're always planning. They always have contingency plans because they have their mission and they plan for it to go, plan A, but it never works out to be plan A. So they got plan B, C, D, E, and F. And that's the same thing in financial planning. It's the same thing. You have to plan and have contingencies for things that aren't necessarily uh, happy, warm feeling type things, like getting sick or getting disabled or dying or getting killed. But the reality is these things happen. And if you want to, plan to have a long-term successful financial plan for you and your loved ones, you need to be able to have, safety net in place. You need to have those contingencies in place.
Yeah, and I'll add a layer to that too. Again, there's a number of living benefits to life insurance that can help subsidize and complement retirement. But also too, life insurance is uh, when a benefit is paid, it's a tax-free benefit. So those on the receiving end aren't necessarily paying taxes on those dollars. And you can use life insurance to help from a healthy retirement perspective, where if you want to leave a legacy to the next generation, um, but also concerned about like spending down your resources, you can spend down your retirement and then and still be able to leave a legacy through life insurance and replenish those dollars to the next generation.
Leverage it. Yeah.
Where oh, I have a couple $100,000. I want to go on trips and take my kids on to Disney World and all those things, and not necessarily feel like you're taking those resources away from like a benefit or an inheritance perspective. You can replenish it with the death benefit of life insurance. So again, just a different way to think, but all relevant, I think, for long-term planning.
Thank you both. And I think we have some questions coming in on the chat, and I'd like to invite Sierra. I believe you'll be able to direct some of the questions that we're hearing from those who are participating and maybe get some answers from Brian and Michael.
Yeah, definitely. We have a couple in the chat, and I just want to say thank you to all of you. It's been super informative just for myself to learn. But one of the questions from a participant came, and she's asking what your suggestions would be as far as preparation go with regard to transitioning out of the military service. I know we had several Blue Star Families members who will be transitioning within the next 12 to 18 months. And they're curious if you have kind of any must-dos before they get out.
Michael, do you want to?
Sure,
I feel like
sure.
that might be your sweet spot.
Um, Yeah, I think the first thing is, it's kind of it's a simple question, but it's a kind of a complex answer, right? So it depends on a lot of things. Number one, it would depend on, where they're at as far as, their family, where are they at as far as their family structure? Where are they at financially? Have they been on active duty for, 1 to 4 years? Have they been on active duty for 18 to 24 years and they're looking at retirement? How many dependents do they have? But I think the biggest thing to do would be circle back to calculating that basic insurance need, taking advantage of the tool that Brian's organization offers would be a great start to just find out exactly where you stand right now before you get out, because you already know that you're going to be losing a lot of these group benefits. And the other thing that I would suggest is if you're in good shape and you're fully insurable, uh, it would be worth your while to look at some permanent solutions for some commercial insurance companies that I think would be very competitive. Maybe slightly a little more than what you'd be paying for VGLI when you get out, but the difference is you're locking that benefit in, and it's something that you own versus something that you're renting. And again, your group term insurance, which is what VGLI is, it's 5-year renewable group term insurance. It's rent, and the rent's going to go up. It's only going to go one direction. In fact, it'd go all the way up to over. If you ended up in a situation where you had to keep it, it can get to the point where it's costing you over $2,000 a month to keep the insurance in force, which is unsustainable.
Yeah, understanding the benefits that you have and what the options are to maintain them moving forward. And again, going back to, I think everyone should have access to professional advice. There's a lot of great resources out there. Working with a licensed professional can help you guide that, answer some of the tough questions. To Michael's point, um, with permanent coverage, something that might be in place for a longer period of time. But, there's a lot of great carriers, there's a lot of great companies, and a lot of those folks, depending on your circumstances, can underwrite a certain more favorably depending on age and situation. So, understanding what your options are, taking the time to actually, commit to and educate yourself about that, is again, it's one of those things easy to kind of kick under the rug and worry about later. And then it's 5 years from now and you're like, oh man, I didn't do da da da, I didn't do this, that, and the other, or I need a will, all these things. Um, I just prompt you to act sooner than later.
I would totally agree. I mean, it's the same situation as having auto insurance, right? You never
Yep.
know, you never need it until you need it, right?
Yep.
And it's like trying to apply for an auto insurance policy after you had an accident. I can't tell
Yep.
you how many people throughout our careers that I'm sure we both talked to that have called and said that they need insurance because they've been diagnosed with cancer or they've had a heart attack. Well,
Yep.
unfortunately, they can't get it anymore. So that's something to be mindful of, is that not only your financial condition, but your condition, your health condition can change. In some cases, literally overnight. People are being diagnosed with cancer. Roughly they're looking at roughly 5,000 a month, something like that, or more. They're being diagnosed with cancer on an annual basis. So it happens. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. And the other thing that I would mention is don't be intimidated by going to commercial insurance companies and trying to shop things out and get ideas on different plans and different rates. Sometimes you don't even have to go with a permanent cash value type insurance policy. They also have, 30, 40-year term policies that may make more sense, but it locks that cost in and keeps it static for the entire term. But something else that most people don't know also is that your Servicemen's Group life insurance is actually underwritten through Prudential Financial. So it's through Prudential Life Insurance Company of America, which is a commercial company. The government's not doing it. It's being underwritten through a commercial company anyways.
Yeah. And if you're making a transition from military to civilian, I'm not going to pretend to know exactly how that looks and feels, but I know change is change and it can be daunting. And there's a lot of moving parts to that. And working with a trusted individual to help you navigate that from the financial side, hopefully could alleviate a lot of anxiety, give peace of mind and structure moving forward. So we have a find an advisor feature off of our lifehappens.org website, which is also where the calculator is. They can help connect you to professionals, in the areas in which you live. And there's again, everyone on the site has bios, and you can kind of dig in a little bit to their specialties and whatnot. So great resource tool to help connect if you don't have somebody. But yeah, I think in a time of change, prioritizing that financial side and understanding the benefits is incredibly important. It should be top of the list.
Thank you, Brian and Michael. We have one more question regarding the critical illness coverage that was mentioned. Do you recommend that even with access to TRICARE and VA benefits?
Um, I'll I can't speak to, I'll let Michael speak to the benefits from the TRICARE side of things. As far as critical illness and like long-term care and short-term care, those used to be in the insurance world a lot of standalone products, and they still are. But the life insurance industry has evolved a lot over the last, I'll say, 15 to 20 years to incorporate a lot of living benefit options that are part of policies. Not all companies offer the same thing, but there's a lot of what they call riders out there that allow you under certain scenarios, whether it's, certain activities of daily living and things that you can't perform, that you would be able to have early access to benefits. And more of those carrier companies are offering that in lieu of a standalone product, a long-term care product. They can be very powerful, and they're very sought after. And I would say that there's a lot of great carriers out there that specialize in that. So it's just good questions to ask, but it's a benefit that a lot of the companies are providing now as part of their programs.
Yeah, and I would also state that, I mean, yes, because you have your VA benefits. If you have VA benefits, whether it's disability or you haven't activated any VA benefits yet, but you also have TRICARE. This is living benefits are basically benefits that are just cash. That's immediate cash that's available to you in the event something happens. Whether you suffer, in this case, in this example, I'm saying a catastrophic illness occurs. Say you have a heart attack, stroke, cancer, you have major organ failure, something like that occurs. Even though, yes, you might have short-term disability, you might have VA benefits, but still being able to have a cash infusion of $50 to $100,000 or more is definitely going to be able to allow you to focus on wellness and getting well, right, and recovering instead of worrying about how the car is going to get paid or how the mortgage is going to get paid, and worrying about those financial pressures. Stressing out and worried about things like that are not going to be conducive to you getting well and getting your health back.
That makes sense. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jessica, for leading us through this conversation. I really appreciate everybody who showed up today. We will be sharing the Life Happens website along with several pieces from ACLI within the Blue Star neighborhood. So if anybody has any further questions, please feel free to ask them now. And if not, I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.